Welcome to BSCM 2206 Health and Safety Supply Chain Module 3 Health and Safety Policy, Responsibilities and Resources. Now we are going to discuss about the organization component. Now let me clarify something which is very important. In the earlier segment what we discussed is statement of intent. If you look at the handouts which I have given, you can see very clearly there are two HSC policy related documents. One is the HSC policy statement, other one is the HSC policy document. HSC policy statement is actually the statement of intent. If you look at the HSC policy document, you will see the statement of intent, organization, arrangements, review requirements, and everything is included into that one. So remember, in generally, the HSC policy that is been displayed in some places outside in a framed manner in one single page or maximum 2 pages, that is the statement of intent. The HSC policy document is nearly 20 to 30 pages and it describes how the health and safety environmental issues is been managed in the organization, right? So after the statement of intent, we discuss about the organization and how the responsibilities are being cascaded. The organization section of the policy should define the names and duties of people within the organization who are responsible for the development and communication to the workplace of the health and safety policy. So these people, initially we are going to identify responsible people for the development and communication to the workplace of the health and safety policy. So which means they have to develop the policy and they have to communicate the policy to the grassroots level. This is the initial responsibility or the very first responsibility within an organization. Two key personnel, the most senior accountable person for managing occupational health and safety. This is the person who's going to sign it. HSC policy statement and as well as the HSC policy document. Both will be signed by this person. Then who is advising for that? Health and safety competent person. So in generally, when the health and safety policy is being defined and the statement of intent is being defined, these are the two key people working together, the most senior accountable person and the health and safety competent person. Now health and safety competent person is the, in theory, advisor to the senior most manager. Then it comes to implementation stage. Within the organization, the managers, directors, departmental managers, supervisors, etc. with delegated health and safety responsibilities. What are the delegated safety responsibilities? These people are going to pass down the health and safety policy to the grassroots level or to lower levels and also supervise and monitor implementation of the same. Then comes competent persons. Remember, in any of the organizations, there are certain critical tasks. What critical task? If something gone wrong within the implementation of that particular aspect, something will be harmed. Now say as an example here, occupational nurse, first aiders, fire marshals, in-house inspection, testing personnel, all these things are performing a very critical task. They don't have much people within the organization to perform this task. Therefore, whoever the people who have performed a critical task and their competency levels should be very high. Remember, it's competent persons, not knowledgeable persons. Then comes safety representatives. Safety representatives represent their own flow lines or functions. Now, own flow lines means in an operation, now actually even during the first segment of the exercise, we discussed about the activity blocks. Now, these activity blocks are interconnected. They are flowing in line, right? So, the representation of this each and every flow line is coming under one safety representative. As an example, there may be one safety representative for the warehouse, one safety representative for the transport system, one safety representative for the administration office, another safety representative for the factory. So like that, there will be certain safety representatives to look after one flow line or one activity or one function. All these things, all these people are coming under safety manager or competent person. Then within the organization, I have described a little bit of an example to enhance your knowledge. So remember in the HSCMS, that is Health, Safety and Environmental Management System. First, there should be an organizational structure. In this organization structure, you will get health, safety and environmental responsibilities with a responsibility matrix. So you identify the organizational structure, then you allocate them responsibilities in a pictorial manner. Who are they? Managing director, functional leads, heads, managers, supervisors, company employees and contracted employees. Then comes corporate HSE advisor. This is the health and safety environment competent person. Then comes contract owners and contract holders. Many of the businesses, they are not doing everything within that activity by themselves alone. There will be contractors coming in. Say as an example, Brandix is a very large apparel manufacturer in this country. They produce the apparel, but the transportation to warehouses and to the port is being done by Logivis of Hayleys. Now, contract owner is the transportation contract is owned by Logivis. There will be a manager dedicated for Brandix activities. So he's the contract owner of logistic activities of Brandix. Then the contract holder from Brandix, there will be a person looking into the practical application of the contract terms and conditions with Logivis. So contract owner stays within the contracted organization, contract holder stays within the business. So they also have dedicated responsibilities. Then how the communication flows. Having an organization is fine, but how the health and safety environmental instructions, policies, procedures and standards are being cascaded. Initially, all these policies, procedures and other aspects were defined and agreed upon at the HSE steering committee. HSE steering committee is the topmost organization within a business to decide and finalize on health, safety and environmental related issues. This is headed by the CEO of the most responsible person and supported by the corporate HSE advisor or consultant. You can say whatever the name, but he's the senior most health and safety environment person. Then who are the other members? Functional heads, supervisors, company employees representatives, contract employees representatives, and contract owners representative and contract holders representative. All these people will be part of the health, safety and environmental steering committee. Why? This is the place where policies, procedures and standards are being agreed. Once that is been agreed and decided, it will be passed down to HSE committee. What is HSE committee? HSE committee is the one within those business blocks what we discussed earlier, right? So every business block will have a supervisor and health and safety representative. Then comes toolbox meetings. Now the toolbox meetings are the small meetings which we do on and off or random manner or even on daily basis at the floor level. This is headed by the supervisor and the health, safety, environmental representative. What is the requirement of this one? Now, HSE steering committee, they agreed upon standards and the requirements. It has been cascaded down to HSE committees. HSE committee passed down that information to the supervisors. The supervisors who are taking part in these steering committee activities, they will pass down that instructions to the grassroots level or the floor level through toolbox meetings. So this is the standard communication structure. Now you can see here how the messages are being passed down. Managing director, he is the responsible person. He will pass the instructions to the departmental managers, from the departmental managers to line managers and supervisors. From the supervisors it goes to employees. Then employee is accountable to the line manager. Line manager is accountable to the departmental manager. Departmental manager is accountable to the managing director. Actually, managing director also responsible for board of directors, right? Okay. Now you can see here the role of the HSE advisor. Now you can see HSE advisor, he is passing advices starting from board of directors to the managing director, to the departmental managers, to the line managers and to employees. Right? And as we discussed earlier, there will be safety representatives and other competent persons. He will be indirectly passing instructions and supporting even those levels. Okay, so this is the flow of communication, responsibilities and accountabilities. This is the flow chart. Right. This is the responsibility matrix. You can see very clearly the designations are here. Then some indicators of what their role is. I stands for inform, A stands for approve, R stands for responsible, and C stands for consult. Now you can see here day-to-day operation of the terminal. This is a LPG facility, Shell Gas Lanka Limited and Shell Terminal Lanka Limited. So day-to-day operations of the terminal, keep MD informed. Direct operations should approve the operation. Responsibility is coming with the terminal retail manager. That is about the distribution aspect of it. Then day-to-day operation of the Mahabima depot. This is the plant. Keep the managing director informed. Direct operation should approve. Consult HSE advisor if there's an issue, and plant manager should be responsible for. Then the day-to-day operations of the bulk transport. Managing director informed, direct operation approve, supply and delivery manager is responsible, and health and safety manager is to be consulted if there's an issue. Now here there are some I's without any designation included. That is because it is required to identify where these things are going. This is customers. So the customers are not clearly identified here. Whoever the person who's taking the delivery, he should be informed that the delivery is coming to his location. So that's why you can see here bulk transport. Right. Now you are going to have a small another small exercise. Very simple one. Draw your organizational diagram. Right. Now maybe you will have already formed up. You will be forming up your organizations. Once you form up your organizations, please identify all previous designations which we discussed and identify their responsibilities. Minimum 5 activities within a process block. Why 5 activities? They should not be interdependent, because I want you all to get to know how these things are being cascaded at different levels. After that, HSE policy documentation. Now we are coming to arrangements from the organization. Earlier, initially we discussed about the statement of intent, what the company is planning to do. Then the organization, how the decision is being made, how the HSE policy being made, and how it is being cascaded. Now what we are going to talk about is the arrangements to do that or to implement the statement of intent. This section of the policy will outline the arrangements in place within the organization for ensuring safety of everyone while meeting any specific hazards, legal requirements, etc. Now the management of the hazards is the most important thing. Why it is important? If you remove the hazard, your risk will be removed. This will include health and safety rules and procedures and the provisions of facilities such as first aid rooms and washrooms. Now, arrangements is practically covering everything. It's starting from policies, rules, guidelines, procedures, work instructions, then the competency, training, equipment, facilities, leave, sanitation, everything. All the arrangements what you should have within the organization for safe conduct of the workers are coming here. For evaluating and managing risk arising from the workplace, hazardous substances, activities, fire, etc. Now the arrangements should be in place, as I mentioned earlier, to assess the risk. Health and safety inspection and audit procedure. If you are having a risk, if you are managing it, you have to conduct inspections and auditing to know that it is been done in the proper manner. Now, even after having all these things, still accidents and illnesses may occur. Once that occur, accidents and illness reporting and investigation procedure, emergency procedures and first aid system should be there within the organization. This also all come in part and parcel of arrangements. Employee health and safety responsibilities. Now you have to educate the employees also about the health and safety responsibilities of themselves, because they can't commit suicide, they can't perform any unsafe acts and hurt themselves or to hurt anybody else. Control of hazardous substances, manual handling, noise, vibration, etc. What are hazardous substances? If the organization or the business activity is using any hazardous chemicals, may be flammable, may be corrosive, maybe it's damaging the skin, maybe causing lung cancer, that kind of things. Those are hazardous substances. Then manual handling. Manual handling is how do they handle loads. Any load more than 5 kg should be handled in a specified manner. How they are going to do it. Then the noise. How much of noise is okay? How much of noise the organization is generating? Then the vibrations. Now all these things, actually hazardous substances, manual handling, noise, vibration, etc. are the ones which are going to create occupational health issues. Occupational safety issues are injuries in general and fatalities. And hazardous substances, manual handling, noise, vibration will create occupational illnesses most of the time, which will be developed sometimes after the initial exposure. Then electricity and electrical equipment, maintenance and testing. Why electricity and moving machineries are the #1 culprit on creating or initiating so much of accidents and incidents in an organization. So therefore, electrical and electricity and electrical equipment also has to be managed. Then as I mentioned, machinery safety. Are your lifting equipment safe? How to inspect it? How to perform a task? All these things should be captured. Then procedures for contractors and visitors. How many people coming in? How many people going out of the system? This has to be monitored. Because why? Contractors and visitors who are coming into the facility are the ones who are creating problems. The reason is because they are not familiar with the arrangements. They are not familiar with the systems in place. So when the person comes in without knowing how to behave inside the premises, they might end up creating a lot of problems. Then catering and food hygiene. This is paramount important. Why? Maybe you all have heard in garment factories, in Katunayaka and Biyagama, there were so many instances where hundreds of workers ended up in hospital due to food poisoning related issues. This cannot happen. There should be some control in that. Otherwise, what will happen? Your entire workforce is going to get affected. Then terms of reference and constitution of the safety committee. Now remember, we talked about safety committee and the safety steering committee. Now there should be some guideline on how to manage these things, what are the levels of authorities they have and what action they can take in the eyes of any violations, or if there's any requirement to change existing policies, standards or procedures. Then there are some other specific arrangements, accidents and investigation and reporting them, health and safety training and information, health and safety monitoring and auditing, Why do we have to have these arrangements for these kind of things? But remember, these are proactive things. When an accident occurs, you have to investigate to find out where it went wrong, not who did the wrong thing. Then the health and safety training and information. Then the monitoring. All these three things basically will give you an insight of how to prevent something in the future. Then comes health surveillance. Health surveillance is checking constant basis how healthy your workforce are. Now, accidents, health and safety training and information and auditing will tell you how safely the organization is functioning now. Health surveillance give an insight, though you have not seen are they generating any occupational related illnesses. As I mentioned earlier, illnesses are coming out of hazardous substances, noise, vibration, and occurred positioning, lifting kind of issues. Then monitoring of plant and equipment and its maintenance. Maybe you all have heard. Sometimes it say the gantry crane failed and it crushed the operator. The jack failed, it crushed the operator. Platform failed, 2 people die. All kind of things. Now why? That because of plant and equipment were not maintained properly. There's nothing called equipment failure and it's not an excuse to justify somebody's death. Even equipment maintenance is part of the responsibilities. Then liaising with external agencies. Now, institutions like SGS Inspection Service, British Standard Institute, Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, Ministry of Labour, Ministry of Industries. These kind of external agencies are required sometimes to get the guidance and to drive our organization in the right manner. The arrangements should cover even facilities and provisions for that. Then internal arrangements, resources and competence. How we are going to get your mechanics trained? How we are going to get your operators trained? How do you know that your operator is competent? I told you the difference between the competency and knowledge. Remember, if your business is performing any critical task, you should know who are the critical people and how to replace them in case of an emergency. Then training. You get them and you should know the minimum training requirement. Why? The competency is key when you are performing critical tasks. Then regulations, policies and standards. Any organization functioning should know what are the requirements according to the legal framework and what are the standards to be followed as far as the industry is concerned, and what are the policies laid down by authorities and sometimes IPs, interested parties. Then the risk management and the hazard effect management process. Now the risk management is how we are managing the risk in your business. Hazard effect management process is how to remove the hazard. I told you earlier also, once the hazard is been removed, the risk also automatically been removed. Then planning and procedures. How you are planning to do your work. What are the procedures in place to perform a work safely? Now I can quote very classic examples from a very basic practices. You want to you climb up using a ladder. How you are going to climb it? You bring the ladder, keep it against the wall and climb. That's the standard way. But the real procedure is the ladder should be a certified ladder. Someone has to inspect it and see that ladder can carry the required load to the required height and it stands safely even after letting a person to climb. So these are very basic things, right? So in organizations who are performing risky business or risky activities, they will have procedures for such things. You can't just do things like that. Now, within this planning and procedures, there are certain inputs, annual HSC targets and plans. Why do you require this? If your annual HSC target is 0 incidents, what plans do you have to ensure that? Remember, in this entire HSC business, if you have made a statement, you have to have a system to work. Now, statement of intent says you are minimizing the harm to your people and the outsiders. Now you have to have plans to ensure that you can do that. Then remedial action plan. Remedial action plan is by any chance something goes wrong, how you are going to fix it back. Right. So arrangement still continues. Asset integrity management, equipment. How do you know they are fit enough? What is the lifespan? When you are going to return them back to the stores? Procedures and work instructions. How you are going to tell your people to do each and every work? Consequence management. If something goes wrong, how you are going to manage that? If there's any willful breach of any regulations, how we are going to manage that? That is consequence management. You do something intentionally, you have to pay the price for that. Price in the sense not as a penalty, but definitely some disciplinary action can be taken. Then emergency response and planning. When something goes wrong within the organization, how you are going to manage it? Then implement and monitoring. Right. Exercise 3, very simple one. What risk mitigation measures you intend to have? Now we are talking about your own business. You have to identify what kind of risk are there with each and every activity what you are going to perform. So what risk mitigation measures you intend to have to ensure safety of your own workers and interested parties? What are the critical roles? If you are going to manage a risk, who are critical in that? That is what critical roles means. Now say as an example, one of the risky activities is transportation. You are moving your people from one place to another. What risk mitigation measures will you have? You will have a good vehicle. You will have a trained driver. You will tell your passengers also how to behave. I'm just quoting some examples only. So what are the critical roles? Driver definitely, and maybe the supervisor, maybe the maintenance in charge to ensure that the vehicle is safe, an administrative person to ensure that the revenue license and insurance of the vehicle is in place. So like that, you have to identify your own responsible people in critical roles. What are the key competencies organization should have? Now in your organization, now if you are dealing with any critical activities, now you have to identify key competencies. Now I can remember very well in Umba Dairy, they wanted to have a chemist specialize in microbiology. Why? They are into a dairy company, dairy business. So when it is in the dairy business, there should be someone to ensure milk what they take into production are safe enough. They also wanted a veterinary professional in their farms. Why? To look after the cows. Then safe transport manager in transporting of milk product from the farms to the factory. So like that, you have to visualize in your own business what kind of activities you are going to perform and what are the competencies, very key competencies the organization should have in managing that business. What will you do in an emergency situation? Now there can be many emergencies depending on your business. How you are going to manage it? In Mahila Apparels, I can remember they caught an emergency situation of a fire. Why? In the apparel industry, there will be electrical equipment and fabrics. So electrical equipment and fabrics is a very bad mixture. Electricity can produce heat and sparks and fabrics will burn. Okay. So in the same manner, you have to identify what kind of emergency situations you all will have. And EasyGo Cabs was discussing about situations of fatal accidents where one of their clients were died. So that is the emergency situation in their business. So finally, we are going to come to the review. Once you do the HSE policy, you have to do a review also. Why should you do a review? Then only you will know that your business is being completed properly. to ensure that your business controls are intact and still having a good control over the situation. The best control systems will deteriorate over time. Why? The process change, human beings change, material change, geography can change, climatic conditions can change, law and rules, regulations can change. So every time this happens, there will be a change in your system also. So best control systems are not old systems, continuously reviewed systems. So remember, therefore, you have to have a periodical review of your business activity. So in generally, a basic question, when and why should an organization review its health and safety policy? I have already discussed why, because of the changes. I have put this particular question in italics. This is a potential question. Maybe your final exam, maybe any of the interim exams. So in generally, how it is been reviewed? Annually as part of formal review cycle. Annually we review all the documents as a matter of rule. And also a change in the health and safety responsible person and or health and safety competent person. So in the management review, in generally, we conduct audit findings on HSE management, annual assurance letter or review process. That means this annual assurance and review process means all the sub-directors, factory managers who are in other areas. Now say as an example, if we take Brandex, it's one of the largest apparel manufacturers in Sri Lanka. Their corporate head office is in Colombo and they have so many factories in all over the country. At least annually, all the factories located in Batticaloa, in Polonnaruwa, in Giritale, in Ratnapura, they have to submit an annual assurance to the directors saying that for this 1 year we have conducted our activities without hurting anybody, without killing anybody, without damaging the environment. Okay, with that we are coming to the end of the policy document segment. But let's recap. First one is the statement of intent. What is the statement of intent? Statement of intent is the one which is been specified by the senior management on how they are going to achieve safety within the organization. It is just their vision. They think, okay, we can do it like that. So all the directors and the key stakeholders agree on the statement of intent. Then comes the HSE policy document. HSE policy document is the one which specify how the content of the statement of intent is being achieved. There are few key segments: organization responsibilities, then comes arrangements and review. These are the key components of the HSE policy document. So remember, I am repeating you again, the HSE policy document is the mechanism of achieving intentions of the initial document, which is the statement of intent. That's why it is known as statement of intent. We are planning to do this, we are hoping to do this, and how it is being achieved in a proper way is the HSE policy document. So what we discussed now is, initially last time we discussed about the HSE policy statement of intent, which was done last week, and then we also discussed about the HSE policy document, how it looks like. Now, if you have any questions with regard to the HSE policy document or HSE policy statement of intent, please you can ask now. How? Please WhatsApp. We are not going to take any breaks as of now. But while we are going on with this discussion, if you have any issues, I'll just give you about a minute. While we are having this short discussion, you can still WhatsApp it to me. I will post the responses soon after completing this entire session. Okay. Now the next segment is, we learnt about the HSE policy document, but we have to prepare one for ourselves. Why? Everything is depending on the organization. All the organizations are different to each other. You will realize this very clearly once you start to work out with your own organizations. Okay? Right. Now, here we are going to do the practical application of it. Developing HSE policy statement of intent. Statement of intent you have to develop by yourself, saying this is what you are going to achieve in your organization. I have given you enough and more examples earlier of statement of intents. Please prepare something similar to that for your own organization. Then HSE policy document, how the statement of intent is achieved. We are going to do this one also, right? So HSE policy document is a mechanism of how we are going to achieve what is been specified in the statement of intent. Remember, organizations only with statement of intent but without HSE policy document is a false promise. Why? In the statement of intent you say we are hoping to run this business in this manner and we are going to do these things. But if you don't have a mechanism of doing that, it is not going to be a successful one. So remember, don't fall into the category of those who have given false promises. I can quote some classic examples. If you look at the industrial related accidents and incidents that are occurring in Sri Lanka and other countries, if you think of those organizations, you can see very clearly they are having a very nicely written statement of intent. We want to be the #1 organization. We are going to care for our people. We will look after them. All the safety practices will be implemented. But if you really look at, you can see those are only empty statements. Why? They don't have any mechanism of practicing what they have already mentioned there. So how we are going to do it? So we are going to develop a HSE policy document with these 3 key segments: organization and responsibilities, arrangements, and review. Let's see how we can start progressing on this from now onwards. So here what you're going to do now is to redo your business organization related to activity blocks. Why? We have a responsibility. What is the responsibility? The organization section of the policy should define the names and duties of people within the organization who are going to be responsible for the development and communication of the workplace health and safety policy. Now what we are going to do is we are going to break our business into business blocks and assess the risk arising out of that. Now here the 2 key personnel are the senior most accountable person to manage the health and safety system and the health and safety competent person who is the health and safety environment manager. Okay, let's see how we do it. Now, earlier in your assignments, you broke your establishment into various operational blocks headed by some key people. Now here I am quoting an example for you to know it, understand it better. The CEO, just elusive organization Lanka Plastics. Okay, so the CEO is there. Then the HSE. health safety environmental manager. Remember, these are the two most important people in developing the health and safety policy. But remember, they can't do it by themselves, not alone. They are leading. But who are going to support them? The operational heads, finance operation, human resource operations, and the physical operation. The three key blocks in the organization: finance, human resource, and operations. And under them, I am quoting only one operational block. Under operations, you get stores, you get factory, and you get logistics. So stores to bring in raw materials, factory is to produce plastic bottles, and logistic is to remove it from the factory and distribute. Who are the other people? Okay, now here is a very small example. How many people in the factory is going to get affected? Casting, the people who do the fabrication of the bottle. Then the quality control, to see whether the bottle is in the right shape and having the right quality of that one. Then the packing department and the maintenance department to ensure this factory is functioning properly. Right? Now here, if you look at this, you will see the CEO and the HSC sitting in on the top of the organization. Then operational heads, the managers, finance manager, HR manager, operations manager. Under them, you will get the supervisors. Supervisors in the stores, supervisors in the factory, supervisors in the logistics. So under the supervisor of the factory, you will see the line heads. Who is in charge of the casting? Who is in charge of quality control? Who is in charge of packing? Who is in charge of maintenance? So like this, you can break them into minor blocks. Look at this organization, the CEO and the HSC. Then you will get other directors. Director of Finance, Director of HR, Director of Operations. Then the managers, manager for stores, manager for factory, manager for logistics. Then under the manager of factory, you will get supervisors. Supervisors in casting, supervisors in quality control, supervisor in packing, and supervisor in maintenance. Under this, you will see the ground level people working. Those are the common workers. So actually, this is how the organization should be defined. Then, why we broke the organization into that grassroots level is to identify the risk associated with the work. Why? Now in the arrangement section, now earlier we were talking about the organization, now we are talking about the arrangement section. Evaluating and managing the risk arising from the workplace, hazardous substances, activities, fires, etc. All these things are coming from the grassroots level. So that's why we define the organization right down to the workers and the supervisors level. That is where the risk is, not anywhere else. Okay. So now what we are going to do is defining business activity blocks with key tasks they perform. Raw material, warehousing, molding. These are just three blocks what we see in our organizations. Now say as an example, supply of raw material, bringing into the factory for molding. Okay. See the risk. Unloading from the ship. The raw material comes to the port. So you have to unload it from the ship. Load and transport to the office factory. Then unloading. Once you unload, you will get them into bulk packing in the warehouse, then stacking, then distribution. Distribution to the factory as and when it is required. So once it comes to the factory, you have to unpack the raw material, you have to put it into the mold and cast the bottle. So this is how activities flow. You have to define your own activity flow in this manner and identify key tasks related with each and every activity. Okay? Right. Now, in each and every activity, there is a risk. How we are going to identify it? Here, I am going to discuss only just two examples. Right? Unloading from the ship, loading and transportation, and now unloading back in your own factory. So the raw material is inside you. Okay, we are only going to talk about that component. Now when you're unloading from the ship, what are the three risks associated with that? Freight falling from above. You lift the containers or packings of your raw material and loading it onto your truck. So freight falling from above, these containers can fall onto your head. Entrapment. While unloading and placing them on your vehicle, your fingers can get trapped. Then the workers moving up and down in the jetty, they can slip, trip or fall and suffer injuries. Okay, so this is during the unloading from the ship. Then comes loading and transportation. Cargo falling. While you are transporting your cargo, it can fall. While doing the loading and unloading operations, while doing the loading operations and transportation operation, if you get down, if you want to readjust it, there is a possibility of entrapment and injuries. Then motor vehicle accident. While you are moving from the port to your factory, your vehicle can meet with an accident. So this is one of the risk what you can see. Then comes your unloading in the factory. Cargo falling. Even during the unloading, you are using a forklift to unload it. While you are removing it from the truck into your warehouse, it can fall. Entrapment and injuries. While the forklift is moving here and there, other people can get trapped. While handling the cargo, the people's fingers can get hurt. Then stack failures. You are going and piling them inside the warehouse. How do you know your stacks are not being overloaded? Your forklift can strike and the entire amount of stacks can fall and it can cause severe injuries. Okay, so now this is how the risk is to be assessed. Not just by looking at it and say, okay, this is the risk. No. You have to separate your activities into tasks. Then what is the risk associated with each task? Once you assess the risk only, you will know exactly what kind of things and how much of things can go wrong. Now, since you have assessed the risk associated with each and every activity, this is going to be a very big document. Okay. Right. Now, since you know what the risk is, what controls will bring you in? Because if you know that there is a risk of containers falling, people getting trapped, people getting stuck with the forklift, slips, trips and falls on the ground. Now you are having a binding agreement in your HSE policy that you are going to ensure minimizing the injuries, zero harm. Okay, so you have to control it now. So how we are going to control it? This is one of the very key things which you all have to discuss with the consultation of the workforce. Why they are the people who are getting exposed to this risk, not you. So you have to ask from them how best we can control this. Okay, right. So these are the risks what we are going to control. You have to think now, you have to talk to your workers how you want us to manage freight falling from above. What is the best way to ensure no entrapments will take place? What is the things what we supposed to do to avoid slips, trips and falls? How to minimize cargo falling while handling? How to minimize entrapment and injuries? How to zero motor vehicle accidents during the transportation? Is there any better thing what you supposed to do with our vehicles? So to change the route, change the timings of our operations. So you have to get the suggestions from them. Then while you are inside your warehouse, cargo falling while you are transporting it from the truck to the warehouse. How to prevent entrapment and injuries. How to prevent stack failures. Now this is the time HSE advisor, the operations head, managers, supervisors and workers should get together. Where are they going to get together? That is where the HSE committee meetings are. Okay? So HSE committee meeting, you will get all these people meeting together. So who will be responsible? Now the responsibilities are to be identified depending on the organization chart what we developed in the earlier part of the same assessment. Right? What methods are required? How we are going to control it? So remember again, consultation of the lowest level, which is the HSE committee meeting, is the place to do this. What competencies need? You have to ask from the workers. Do you know how to operate the forklift? Do you know how to calculate the load bearing capacity of the forklift? What is the maximum angle the forklift can strike? What is the maximum angle the forklift can climb? Are you going to drive it forward or reverse? Can the crane operator be very sure that he's competent in handling the crane? So like that, we should know our workforce and the supervisors and the managers are competent in handling these things. Then what is your plan? Because I'm very sure when it comes to methods required, you will not have the right equipment. When it comes to competencies, many people will not have the right competencies also. And the responsibility will be cascaded right down. No, it is not like that. The responsibility lies based on the organization, what we discussed just a couple of minutes ago. Now, if you have all these things, can you deliver your objectives? What is the objective? There are two sides of the objective. One side, the business objectives to deliver X number of products at the end of every month or week or day. Then also there are HSE objectives to do it with the minimum harm to all the applicable people. Who are they? Your company workers and your IPs, interested parties. Even contractors coming into this. We discussed earlier, remember the contractors, contract holder and the contract owner. There may be contractors working in your organization. Contract holders must ask these people to come in and participate in this exercise if the contractors are getting exposed or getting involved with any of these activity blocks. Right. Now, once you do all these things, you are having the key content for the HSE policy document. Remember, there are two things: statement of intent, what you are thinking of doing it, and the HSE policy document, which says how we are going to do it. Okay. So in the previous segment, we discussed about the HSE policy document, and this is how it to be put into practice. Right. Now you are having an assignment. This to be completed after the break. Okay. So after the end of this segment, we are getting a half an hour break. That is for you to have the discussion with your own teams, own companies. Now you know who the CEO is, you know who are the managers, competent workers, HSE advisor. Now the time to get together. I told you at the very beginning, the organizations what you created are going to remain as valid until we finish this entire health and safety module. Okay. So discuss with your team members. You can call for HSE committee meeting and discuss how we are going to manage your risk within the organization. Okay. So complete your organization, update the organizational diagram according to the activities. Then break the activity blocks into risks. Where the risk comes from? It comes with the task. So when you are defining your activity blocks and going to identify your risk, you have to understand what tasks are being performed within each and activity blocks. Then you identify the risk associated with the task. Then how we are going to control your organization? Who is going to be responsible to manage them? Right. So that is the end of the session for now on this online video. But you're going to take a half an hour break, and after the break, the remaining time, roughly around 1 hour, you are going to have the discussion among your members and develop your plan. And what you're going to do, it's not just to keep it with you. Within this time, before 12:30, you have to send it back to me. This is very key. Remember, in each and every email, please, your heading should start as BSCM 2206. I have activated the automatic filtering system in my mailbox to manage the mails. So all the mails coming with BSCM 2206 in the heading will go to a separate folder. And submit assignments only using info@gistservices.com email. Please don't use the Hotmail one, because actually that is my official email for other activities also. The email box can get congested very quickly. So use only this email address, and remember you have to use the subject heading starting with BSCM 2206, and after that you can say whatever you want, maybe assignment 1, assignment 2, the date, whatever, it's your business. Then you can WhatsApp me. We have created a WhatsApp group. This is the WhatsApp. So while you are completing your assignment or attempting your assignment, if you have any doubts, please do contact me. And remember, please don't expect lengthy typed responses. I can't do that. I don't have time for that. But we'll call, right? So don't expect any answers directly. So the best thing what you can do is when you're calling me on WhatsApp, the team lead can get all the other participants of the team into your group. Then you call me. So when I'm responding, everyone will be listening to that. So collective calls, maximum 10 minutes. You should know that I am not going to do the assignments for you. I am only helping. So don't expect very lengthy calls.